Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my God of War, God Mode pain run. So talk about nightmare fuel. This is the Cerberus breeder, and it is by far one of the most frustrating things you can ever do in any video game ever. I cannot begin to express just how much this fight sucks. And it's funny because it is actually quite humorous. The idea is this big dog spits baby dogs, and then you use the baby dogs to kill the big dog, right? That's the idea of it. However, if you let these babies live for too long, they turn into big dogs. And when you have like 3 of them, you cannot kill them quick enough to stop them from making more. So you just get like 5 of these dudes, and it's an unwinnable fight that lasts forever. So what you have to do is you have to overextend into oblivion, be as aggressive as you can, get as lucky as you can, and kill as many of these dogs as you can. If you can kill the pups before they grow up, and you can get to a point where they stop spawning in, you've won. Because the Cerberus breeder itself is not a very difficult opponent, and you can bounce it infinitely if you want to do that. But the dogs, man, the dogs, these guys, like, I've made this look relatively simple, minus the part where I almost died. But this sucks. It sucks so much. And I thought it was impossible. I really did. I was contemplating like trying to find an out of bounds or something. I was like, this can't be done. This is stupid. Because I did the same thing I did just then, and they just all kept growing up. You know, I grabbed them, I threw them, I grabbed them, I threw them each other, I grabbed them, they all grew up. They grew up like 5 times, and in that moment, I just really second-guessed whether or not this was even a thing that can be done. And then I won. And then I won, and it looked easy, and I couldn't understand what I did differently, because in reality I didn't do anything differently, the game just kind of gave it me. But at this moment, I didn't know that you could do the really funny aerial bouncing on this boss, so instead I just did a bunch of bouncing with him. And it almost cost me too, because this thing is incredibly durable, and it hits like a truck. So don't get too confident with its shenanigans. But if you can, launch it, keep it launched, and that'll be the end of it. But I think, is there one more? I think there might be one more, actually. I think there might be 2 of these guys. But you really can't get a good understanding of just how fucking awful this is until you try it. You know, when you watch a video and you see someone do it, it's not reality because you've not felt it. To learn how quickly this whole thing goes is kind of profound. And I thought that there was 2 of those dogs in that sequence, but I think that just must have been from them multiplying on previous attempts. But again, we move forward now, and we've got a couple of Sand Kings. And you can use that block that I was pushing there to kind of sandwich these kings so they can't get to you. And then you can attack through them with the flinch from the splash on the big moves. Be it, you know, Plume or Spirit. Or you can just control them like this, which again, I can understand why people skip this, because it's just kind of looping the same move. And I think this is one of the things that really leads into the idea that God of War, when it comes to being a challenging game, is not that challenging compared to some of its peers, because you do these moves that are very safe and that work, you know? But that's any game that you play on the challenge run criteria. It's like what JTB was saying about Ninja Gaiden Black. There comes a point in Ninja Gaiden when you do a challenge run where all you're doing is removing away all the good things, so all that's left is a handful of things that are viable, and in that game you use the most viable thing to win. So when you strip away the tools, it turns into, which tool left is at the top of the pyramid, I'll use that. And I do think in many ways that God of War on Pain is a lot like that, and I think that's one of the reasons why maybe people don't enjoy this as much as something like, if you were to do, you know, Kick Me signing God Hand, or if you were to do Devil May Cry and go for the SS ranks or something like that. But I do think sometimes that there's a beauty and a simplicity to the minimalism of a challenge run where you don't have many tools. And I've been spamming, you know, Plume of Prometheus for 20 fucking years, and it never gets boring to me. I guess you'll have to be the judge, because maybe you're watching this and skipping ahead, and I wouldn't blame you if you did. You know, life is very important, and we only have a finite amount of it, so if you don't want to watch me Sand King the tits off these guys with my big old chains, I would not begrudge you. And I say that knowing full well that most people aren't even watching this, they're listening to it while they do something on the side. We've become a culture now, haven't we, of attention deficit, where if you're not at least listening to 2 podcasts, 2 albums and an audiobook at once while playing a video game and on a treadmill, you're just not fucking living, boy. Ooh, be really careful here as well. I had a fail video on one of these kings where I went in to do the circle input and Kratos whiffed. I might have spoken about how frustrated I was at Cyclops whiffing on the grab back on the early videos when they were closer to when I recorded them, but I've not thought about this for a while and it came flooding back when I saw that circle right now. So the reason I am not doing the circle, guys, is because I lost a run here. Because the Sand King did what he does best when bad collision or bad detection or whatever it is with the grab in this game where it doesn't work. It reminds me a lot of Yakuza. If you play the original on PS2, Kiryu just does not grab anything. He's a fucking nightmare. He's just worthless. You can grab and your hand will go through a guy's chest. It's painful. Hey, speaking of painful, we have this really trolley corner here filled with archers, and it's an absolute nightmare getting close to it, but once you're close, it turns into a Rorschach moment, and you get this weird thing as well where you throw people there, where it kind of can't calculate it correctly, so instead they just take a whole host of damage and die, which I really like. Be very careful of the arrows, though. The arrows will indeed explode, and I think that when they explode, it goes through your block. So be very, very aware that anyone that has arrows can turn into a bad situation. And anytime you see these little dogs, guys, if you don't kill them, they turn into the big ones. Every time you see these guys, I have such like mercilessness for these pups. It's not even funny because I've got real bad memories. And there's a sequence, isn't there? Is it in God of War 2? I think they do it again in God of War 2, but in God of War 2 it's a bit more manageable. It's this one where it gets bad really fast and it's just insane. And then they come back in God of War 3, but in God of War 3 I think the problem there is the satyr, isn't it? There's like a silly goat man doing what he does best in the background, being a dickhead. And I do like that fight, because I think that that's a clever way of using satyrs, because those are enemies that don't really feel like they were designed to be with anybody else, so when you put them with someone else, it really throws a wrench in this idea that God of War is a very safe kind of game where you just lean on all the established patterns to conquer everybody. And then that guy turns up and he sits on his staff and there you go. Ooh, these are the guys I mentioned earlier. They're Legionnaire captains. And I don't remember this enemy when I came back to the game, which is really funny because I'm almost certain that they're in later God of Wars as well, but my memory is a bit hazy on some of the stuff. This is an annoying nuisance of a monster, but truth be told, once you fight them a little while, you realise what's going on with them, and you realise just how interesting they are. Because not only do they have this ability to block you and do these counter moves that involve strings, but they also have a counter grab. And they're a dangerous creature that's constantly keeping pressure on you, but they feel fair. And even though they're wearing armour, it's not that kind of gold armour that the other Legionnaires are wearing, so you can do a lot of shenanigans with them if you want to. They are able to be grabbed when you bounce them, and you can use collision to bounce them a lot, and they are very susceptible to being looped in the many ways that you can. They also give you opportunities to get out of some of their moves, which I like, and if you're parrying, you can get some breathing room. But the reason they're so intimidating is they're always aggressive, they always run towards you, and because they can grab you, at any moment it can end. You know, any run where you're trying to not take a hit can just be ended by this guy's capacity to do that. And it makes him a nuisance. But I do think the more you fight them, the more you come to appreciate them, because when I first did this sequence, I hated them. I just thought, damn, this guy's annoying. I don't remember him being this annoying. And then by the end of it, like, there's a fight that you do when you do some swimming. You swim into a chamber and one of those guys turns up and there's a bunch of them. That particular fight was the fight where I really learned to kind of optimize what I wanted to do against them. And I think once you have a strategy and you kind of fashion it into a nice sharp point, you go from disliking something into really understanding the mechanics of what's going on. So I started to enjoy these guys more than I did the standard guys, because they're not quite as aggressive as the standard Legionnaires. The fodder, they just dive bomb you the whole time. Whereas this guy, he thinks about it a bit more. And then that leads us to the Minotaur warriors here, and their shockwaves. I don't know if I've spoken about this, but again, the Minotaurs have a very particular way of launching them. And depending on which Minotaur it is, depends on how you want to do that. And my usual strategy involves waiting for them to start an attack, and then using Ascension to launch them, and then looping them with a throw. Sometimes it doesn't work though. Did you see that just then? That just then, on that particular move, it didn't work. So instead I moved around it, and then I did it on his recovery, and it did work. And then we lead to another sequence that Chris absolutely fucking despises. So, full transparency here, guys. I save stated a million times coming up here. I think there's about like 6 save states on this. I just brute forced it because I despise this encounter. This to me is everything wrong with God of War 1, and I just don't like it. I just don't think there's any imagination here. I don't think there's any brain behind it. This is the type of thing that would lead to a fucking divorce. Like, this is Pistols at Dawn kind of dog shit, and there's just nothing here of value to me. Sadly, at the time when I was doing this and getting really fucking annoyed and wanting to just delete this whole project, I didn't know that you could do the tricking with Artemis to weird out the AI of this soldier and just push it all the way to the top. If I'd have known that, what I saw Zim do on one of his projects when I looked at it after I'd recorded, I would have done that. Because this to me is total dog shit. And I've seen speedruns skip this as well by jumping up and doing some interesting things. I would have even done that. Like, this is everything I don't like about God of War, wrapped up into a neat, bored encounter. And if it was just, push it up to a rock, couple of captains spawn, kill them, push it up to the next rock, couple of captains spawn, kill them, push it to the top and you're done, I'd have no problem with it. But the fact these guys never stop coming, and the fact that they're so fucking annoying, and the whole level is designed in such a way to make you push this thing up like Sisyphus and have the fucking thing roll back on you. I get the allegory, dude. I get the homage. I get the reference. I don't want to be Sisyphus, dude. No one wants to be fucking Sisyphus. Sisyphus doesn't want to be Sisyphus, dude. And he's him every day. And I've seen a lot of players do this too, because I did watch a bunch of videos to see what everyone was doing. And I'm amazed some people have managed to just be really aggressive and just get him up there. I think it's really, really impressive. So kudos to those guys. But this was done in 5 minutes. I was like, fuck this. Save, 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 save. At the top, fuck you, never doing it again. And I'm never doing this again, ever. Like, if I could just fly, if I could go into a debug mode and just run up and go into the next room, I would do that. You know, and that's the difference, isn't it? I'm not looking to be this God of War guy. I'm not looking to impress the God of War guys. I'm coming back to a game I love, and I want to do something that I think is cool. But does anyone like this fight? Like, I feel like even Big V probably doesn't like this fight. You know? Like, that fight tilted me so much, I take damage on this fight. And this fight's not a difficult fight, I was in such a bad headspace. And it's a knock-on effect, isn't it? Once you start getting tilted, the psychological damage is just too high. This is really weird, though. It's like 30 fucking pups in this room. And that's why I said earlier, guys, when you want to do a challenge run, you have to be present. You have to be in the right headspace. And I learned that in almost every challenge run I've ever done. If you're not where you need to be, you're not going to get the job done. And it's what I say when people ask me about Souls games. Because Souls games, when you lose, they have these runbacks, which back in my day, we used to just call it shit checkpoints and lament it. Whereas now it's a fucking mechanic, and people celebrate laziness, basically, because they want you to waste 40 seconds of your day running back to a boss that beat you. And I just don't really understand that. It's just really shitty. And admittedly, some checkpoints back in the day weren't so great as well. This game has got a bunch of criminal checkpoints, and I can forgive it its sins. But I just don't understand this idea of actively wasting the player's time adding to difficulty. And when I go back to those games and do those challenges, I have to be in the right mood to do runbacks. I have to kind of put my brain in that acceptance factor of, I'm just going to take a sip, watch the TV show I've got on the side, and I'm going to run back to the door, and I'm not going to pay attention to the fact that I'm annoyed that I have to run back to this door. And the reason that I love this project, and I love playing on emulator, is I never have to run back to doors anymore. You know, if this was Dark Souls, I could put a fucking save state bang at the fog, and I could just keep going through the fog. And I would be a happy bunny, you know, because I don't care about people's perceived notion of difficulty. Because all the people that want to tell you about difficulty are people who have never done anything difficult. You know, you go on their YouTube channels, and they play the game like dog shit. Getting hit by fucking everything on normal, fully leveled and shit. It's an embarrassment, really. And I never understand why it always seems to be the people that know the least that want to tell you how to do things. It's just fascinating, isn't it? It'd be like me telling fucking Zim what to do. That guy, best God of War player that's active right now in my take. I can't go and be like, you should do this. Because it's fucking stupid. It's stupid, you know? And I might do something that he's not thought of, and he watches it and goes, oh damn, I've not thought to do that, that's interesting. But what he's doing is more effective and killed it 2 minutes faster than what I'm doing. So, like, it's just a different approach. And the experience there and the skill level is vastly different. But the thing with the internet is it's convinced everybody that they know something and that what they know is supreme. And it's such a dangerous mentality to have, because you start believing your own bullshit. And I just... You know, I have moments where my fucking ego gets in the way and I do something stupid, and maybe I'll have to apologise for it later on. But that's gonna happen, isn't it? You know, it's just inevitable. You can't do everything right. Sometimes you're gonna make mistakes. But I can't imagine going onto someone's video, especially a video where they're doing something highly specific, when I've not done that, and then talking to them on an equal level. There was a guy on my stream a few months back. It was a really funny moment, and I mean no shade to this person. I don't want to say their name just in case somebody wants to say anything, because it doesn't really need to have anything said. But we were talking about doing Bloodborne on Blood level 4, and I was saying how it's one of the most challenging non-leveled runs of a Souls game, because in Bloodborne the counter damage when you make a mistake is really high. So you can get hit like a truck at any point by many things in that game, and it makes it really punishing. Especially if you overextend. And a lot of players who are inexperienced with that game overextend, and they end up putting themselves in danger, and they die for it, because they'll trade on something or they'll get hit when they're trying to do something silly. And then you get hit like a train. Big old damage. Nice old reset. And this person was arguing with me that it's not that bad. And to give you an idea, guys, I've beaten every single boss in Bloodborne at a certain criteria. No damage, no leveling, highest new game plus, you name it. Every single one. All the Chalice dungeons, I've done it all. You know, fettered, rotten, all that stuff. I've been there. Many of the videos are on YouTube. You might have seen them. So I know a thing or two about banging my head against bosses in that game without leveling up. And I recommend that if you want to play that game and you want to see a more interesting side of it, you should do it too. Because it's really cool. You learn a lot about the bosses, about the patterns, you learn a lot of strategies, you become a better player. But this person wanted to argue with me that it wasn't that bad. And in my mind, if you're going to say it wasn't that bad, that's like what Frosted says when he talks about Guitar Hero. Oh, I don't think it's too bad. Dude, you're the best Guitar Hero player in the fucking world. Of course you don't think it's too bad. That's like Chinese people saying, I don't think learning Mandarin is that hard. Because you already did it. And you did it at a time when you didn't know you were doing it. Or maybe you did, you know. Oh, by the way, this is that fight against the Captain Legionnaires that I spoke of. This room here is really, really hard, because there's 3 of them at any given time, I think, and they grab you a lot. So you have to be super careful. But I learned how to play against them and how to be effective, so I owe a lot to this encounter. And it seems like the strategy is to try and get them into a launch, into the harpoon, and then you can bounce them and then bounce them and grab them depending on what you want to do. But the square triangle here is really invaluable. It just has a really, really nice consistency with giving you what you need. The first hit's a bit of a stun, the second hit bounces, and then from there, he blocked it then, be very careful of that. But as long as you're quick to guard, you can defend yourself. And then as soon as you see the circle, you can start capitalizing, and then after that you can launch him again. These are the parts of God of War that I really like. I love coming up with these situations where you have an opportunity to try a move and it leads to more advantage and it leads to an even more domineering fashion of victory. And you only find it from necessity, you know? These enemies take a lot of hits. If you're just going to square them all day, it's going to take hours. So you come up with these little moments to try and deviate, and you end up stumbling into these great setups. And there might even be a better one than what you're seeing here, but this one was really, really handy for getting this done. And that was a really clean room. I'm proud of that one. I'm not proud of this one, though. This is another one with shout-outs to Zim. I got really frustrated here because the fucking bats. All I wanted to do was kill the fucking bats and then fight the Legionnaires on their own, and I just couldn't do it. Turns out, if you're really clever, and you're fucking 200 IQ, man, you come in here, you jump on one of those chests, and then you can climb up onto the next area, get completely safe from the Legionnaires, and then kill all the harpies and come down and fuck these guys up. If I'd have known that, I would have done this in a much better fashion, but I didn't know that. So instead, I was just getting really tilted. And the thing that tilted me was I was getting weird detection. Like, there'd be times when I'd try and grab a harpy or grab a Legionnaire and I'd grab the wrong thing, and then I'd be in this weird okie of them hitting me as I'm recovering. It was all kinds of bad. And getting off-screened by bloody harpy splashes was kind of weird. Because usually the enemies in this game are passive when they're off-screen, and then they kind of move onto screen and do things. Screen control is really important, but I have a few clips of them just being on screen and I get whacked by something. And just then I got whacked by that recovery move that the Legionnaires do. And as much as this really irritated me at the time, I was in a really bad mood, so that wasn't good. That's the worst thing you can do in a challenge run. I think this is a cool fight though, because this does the thing that I talked about earlier. This does the thing where no one here by themselves is much of a threat. Outside of, you know, you can die if you get too cocky. I also get stuck on the camera here. You can do some interesting things ringing these people out on this water, which I really love. And my strategy once I get rid of the harpies is to ring them out into the water. But the Legionnaires put pressure on you and make you block, and then those harpies do a dive bomb that goes through your block. Conceptually, this is a really clever, kind of devious assortment of enemies. You know, you have your one enemy designed to put you in a state, and the other enemy designed to punish it. I love that. I think that's really good. It's just in practice, I just got really frustrated with it. And I'm happy to report that after this, outside of like 2 zones, I didn't get this salty. But on this one, I was definitely seeing red for a little while. Hey, that's that rare combo that they do. I like that combo, it's cool. Dude, Orion's Harpoon is so fun. What a fantastic mechanic. The one in Ghost of Sparta, though, even though it gives you collision, which is really nice for the PSP games, it just feels like shit. It feels really hard to do Orion's Harpoon and then jump and do like a grab afterwards, because it feels like you're just locked in it forever. And it might just be my inexperience with that game's engine, but it just makes it feel really, really awkward. Be very careful with the Minotaurs too, guys. The shockwaves that they do when you're close to them and you block them, they don't hurt you. But if you're at any kind of distance, the projectile turns on, and I think it's unblockable. So close proximity to these monsters is really helpful. That was cool as well. I got lucky on the ascension, but he did what we needed. And then once we get him in the air, we can hopefully bounce him. I don't know if you can throw these guys in the water. I would imagine maybe you can, if you get lucky with like a certain technique. But I just did the launch them into the air grabs. It is safe. It is the old favourite. It's a cool room, this as well. It's got one of those puzzles that's not that obvious, but it's also really simple, so it makes it feel very satisfying when you figure it out. I like this room as well. Just a couple of Minotaurs, and then we go up to the top there, and then there's a couple of the, I think it's the archers. I like it when they put archers with other enemies, because the archers are essentially just a free rocket launcher. And they can be a bit frustrating if they hit you when you're doing no damage. But God of War reminds me a little bit of Tekken. I know that might sound really strange to somebody that knows Tekken. But one of the most important things about Tekken is knowing moves. If you know the character's moves in that game, when you play the next game, you know most of the moves. Because they change them a little bit, but they keep most of them the same. So you build this legacy information of what enemies do and how to fight them. When you fight Minotaurs in this game, when you fight Cyclopses in this game, you can pretty much fight them in all the games. Because they change them a little bit, they give them new tools, they tweak a few things, but most of it stays the same. Like, there's a Minotaur in Ghost of Sparta that's a combination of the one from Chains of Olympus and like a slightly altered version. He's a lot easier, I think. And he does that push that Minotaur just did to me then, right at the beginning of the franchise. The same idea. You attack him, he blocks. If you attack his block, he pushes you. That concept started in the original, and you can see as it's led into all the sequels. And if you know that, when you see that, you know what comes next. That legacy skill, that legacy knowledge, is what makes, I think, God of War so great. And of course the violence and the titties and the aggressive nature of Kratos. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.